For those of y'all that haven't seen my community tab, I just want to speak to you guys real quick that Javon will be posting faith-based content strictly on this channel. Now, I go over all of this on the post that I did on my community tab, so make sure you go read what I've posted on that community tab section, right? And that will explain why I'm getting back into making content like this again. This just so happened to be the first content or the first reaction video that I'm putting out. But expect a lot more videos as far as like my faith is concerned, as far as like messages from the Bible, messages that the Holy Spirit has put into me to give to you guys as a message. So without further ado, I just want to jump into this video. So today we have Young Don explains the real reason he left Christianity. And a lot of people seem to be talking about this right now. I definitely wanted to watch it with you guys. So let's jump right into it.
Everybody wants to know, why doesn't Young Don believe in Christianity anymore? Well, the list is very long, and the amount of information that I have consumed over the course of the past months as I've been actively deconstructing, really my deconstruction started when God started to fail me years ago. I've been a Christian for 3 years, or I was a Christian for 3 years, but we don't have time for all that shit. There are plenty of books by...
And just so you guys know, right, I watch Young Don on my personal time. Just so you guys know, I kind of did feel like he was spiraling a bit because I noticed he started cursing a lot on his Young Don Reacts channel. I noticed he started cursing a lot, and I'm like, dang, like, what happened? I noticed bro spiraling. I seen that he was quote unquote going back to his old ways. And who am I to say that, I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm perfect or anything, but if he clearly was still within the faith, if he still had a fear of God in him, he wouldn't have been cursing on his reaction channel like that. But let's get into it.
Guys like Bart Ehrman, Richard Carrier, Christopher Hitchens. I mean, there's a long list of skeptics, atheists, biblical scholars, people who are Christians and pastors and have PhDs that have written entire books on walking you through the deconstruction of this faith. So if you really are curious, you can go buy a book. But I'll just give you a couple pieces of evidence as to why I no longer believe this. Essentially, I stopped fighting cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you believe something to be true, but then you receive evidence that contradicts it, and you just ignore that evidence, right? So let's turn to John chapter 14 and look at this. It says, "Very truly, I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact will do greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son." See, Christians don't really believe this shit. Okay, you believe in Jesus? Can you do what Jesus did? Can you heal the blind? Can you multiply food? Can you raise the dead? Can you heal the sick? No. You might not be able to. Can you bring me a man? Is there a single man on this earth that can...
Wasn't Jesus' disciples able to do these things though? Wasn't they talking about this in Matthew, with the disciples and stuff? And this is the whole point of why, when Jesus left, at a point, he didn't want his disciples to necessarily rely on him to be the one casting out the devils. Jesus ultimately wanted us to know that we have power in his name. So I'll
resurrect the
disagree
dead.
with
Is
that
there a
one.
single man on this earth that can heal a blind person? Have you ever seen that? No. So what? Is it that you don't believe? I know I believed. I couldn't do none of that shit. But that's what Jesus said. Show me a single man on this planet that can do greater works than what Jesus did. So you're telling me there's not a single man on this planet that has faith, that believes? This is not true. This isn't real. This is a fairy tale. This is made up. This verse is not true. It doesn't work. You can't prove this. You can't prove this. See, this is a bunch of stories. That's why the people in the Bible were able to back this up. Paul raised the dead. Peter raised the dead. They could do what Jesus did, but you can't, because just like this story, those stories are made up. That's what this is. And then the second part of this, I will do
Wait, what does he mean made up? not
Whatever you
understanding.
ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If in my name you ask me for anything, I will do it. That's another thing. I talk about unanswered prayers. And I didn't pray to win the lottery. I didn't pray to become a millionaire. I didn't pray for success and clout or anything like that. I prayed for things like wisdom. But fuck that. What about just the time I was going to a
Excuse me for the cursing, you guys, but this is what I was speaking about. Like Don, he definitely digged a hole for himself. So don't mind the cursing, you guys.
church, and the pastor has been battling an illness for over a decade? And myself, along with people who have been Christians for over a decade, elders in the church anoint this person with oil and prayed for him multiple times, and his illness has only got worse and worse. Or what about the other time?
But see, this is where a lot of the times people grow hardened hearts towards God because they're like, okay, why would such a perfect God make evil be present in the world? And a lot of people fail to realize that that is not something we will ever truly grasp or understand. That's not something our human minds can ever grasp or come to terms with. We just have to understand that within every evil, within every good that's being done in this world, there's a greater purpose behind it. And also, you guys got to understand that Satan is the god of this earth, right? Not saying that Satan is powerful than God, but there's a purpose behind every disaster. There's a purpose behind every evil, right? But you got to remember still that Satan is the god of this earth.
I went to a different church, and there was a kid who was sick with cancer, and the entire church prayed for him. And one was a Pentecostal church. The first one was a Protestant church. This was an Orthodox church. So for the Orthodox Catholic bros who are like, oh well, it's because you weren't in the church. This other church where the kid had cancer was an Orthodox church. Kid died from cancer. What happened with that? But people will say, oh well, God doesn't always answer prayer. He says anything. So now anything don't mean anything. Just like the fact that you will do works doesn't. Jesus don't mean what he's saying. And then if you go to James chapter, let's see, is it James chapter 4? Oh, here it is. James chapter 5. Are there any among you suffering? They should pray. Are any cheerful? They should sing songs of praise. Are any among you sick? They should call for the elders of the church and have them pray over them, anointing them with oil in the name of the Lord. The prayer of the faith, or the prayer of faith, will save the sick, and the Lord will raise them up, and anyone who has committed sins will be forgiven. It doesn't say might. It doesn't say if God desires it, if it's in God's plan. It says will. It says if you do this, this will happen. How many sick people are there that go and receive prayer and they don't get better? How many sick people are there that go and receive prayer and they die? I mean, the hospitals are filled with sick people receiving prayer constantly, and they are going to die. How do you explain that? See, this doesn't work because it's not real. I just accepted that. These aren't the first time I've seen these verses. I've read the Bible cover.
That's crazy to say it's not real though, right? Because you also got to keep in mind or remember that the Bible isn't something that we should necessarily idolize, or the Bible isn't something we should idolize in the sense of we're going to the Bible for literal answers when we should be actually going to God for our answers. So his points are coming from a place of like it's a lot of contradiction going on, but we also got to keep in context or keep in mind that everything in the Bible shouldn't be taken at face value.
To cover. And I've read the New Testament multiple times. I've seen verses like this all the time. And I always just chalk it up to, oh, maybe my faith isn't strong enough. That's why my prayers don't work. Are anyone's prayers strong enough? Bring forth the man whose prayers are strong enough, and let's take him down to the cancer center and start healing these sick children that got cancer. I know you won't step up because you don't exist. You're not real. This religion is just used as a tool to oppress and control people and to villainize other people. And that's exactly what I used it to do. It empowers you and makes you feel righteous and like you know shit. and that you're better than people and you're better than these sinners and you know God and are walking with God. And humans love that shit. And so they point at people who don't believe like them, and you point at people who
But that's the point though. Like you have two types of Christians in this world. You have the Pharisee type of Christians, the ones who are gonna condemn you and judge you and make you feel less than. But then you have a Christian like me who's gonna come on this camera and tell you that yes, I still sin. Yes, I still do this. I still indulge in this. Don is coming from a place of like of hurt, and it seems like he's projecting a lot, maybe based on what he felt internally. Maybe he felt, maybe someone said something to him, or he's seen something that made him feel judged. You know what I'm saying? But there's two types of Christians in this world, Don. Not every Christian are out here trying to come across as like holier than thou. Every time I come in contact with someone, who might be who might be living or willingly living in sin, because there's a difference. There's someone who's willingly living in sin, and then there's someone who's actually trying to leave that lifestyle behind. Now, if I'm trying to leave that lifestyle behind, but you're willingly living in sin, does that make me better than you? Right? So that's something that you also got to think about as well.
you know what I'm saying, it creates villains, it creates enemies for you. And so you start attacking people and condemning people who are just minding their fucking business, bro. You know what I'm saying? And so look, I'm not saying if you're a Christian that you should stop being a Christian, but I'm not.
And YouTube is one of the first places on the internet where I've actually see YouTube is a beautiful thing, but it could also be a messed up thing at the same time, because I've seen a lot of people come on this platform and just literally declined, right? There's certain people who I used to view so highly, and then something happened and I'm like, dang, like who is this person? But all we can
Not
really
Christian
do
anymore
it,
because
all we can really do is pray for Don. Pray for Don, man.
shit is not real. It does not work. You cannot debunk this. Debunk me, right? I ain't gonna argue with you about failed prophecies and contradictions in the Bible, because I know you're gonna run around the block and make up a bunch of excuses. All you pastors, all you men of God, debunk this shit. Let's go down to a cancer center and you heal. And before you come with this bullshit about oh, well, a wicked generation seeketh for a sign. This ain't about seeking for a sign. Don't do it for young Don. Do it for the sick kid, right? Because you really got faith and you really got power like that. Do it for the sick kids with cancer and the parents that are suffering because their child has never done anything wrong, because they're a little baby is being ravaged by cancer, right? Do it for them. But at the same time, you would prove to people like me and people all over the world that this shit is real.
But you also got to think too, if you're not, let's say you're not all the way spiritually tapped in, right? Let's say you're not even trying to live in the spirit. Let's say you haven't been living in the spirit. You haven't been fasting. Your connection with God is just on decline. You're not even trying to be in the spirit. How do you expect to heal the sick? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you expect to heal the sick if your spiritual life isn't where it needs to be? Right? How do you expect to fight the enemy with physical weapons when fighting the enemy is spiritual?
You can't and you won't, because your shit don't work. But also, to refute this idea that a wicked generation seeks for a sign, the Bible tells us that there are signs specifically for unbelievers. See, the people of this who made up these stories understood that it is illogical to expect people to believe in something without giving them any real evidence. And so we see that all over the Bible. We see Jesus and the apostles performing miracles constantly, because why would anyone believe this shit just because you said it? This is just a fucking story. 1 Corinthians 14 verse 22. Not for believers, but for unbelievers. While prophecy is not for unbelievers, but for believers. The miracle, the gift of tongues, is supposed to convert unbelievers. Now, obviously, it's not talking about the incoherent babbling that you see in the Pentecostal church. I'm not even going to pretend to do it right now. But you've heard it. You know what it sounds like when a person talks in tongues. That shit don't convince any unbeliever because it's gibberish and it doesn't make sense and it looks goofy and silly. The only people who believe in that are people who already believe in Christianity. No one's ever
I think because I've read this verse, so I think how it's meant to be understood also is that, if let's say you were an unbeliever and you walked in a church and they were speaking in tongues, how would you be able to understand that? Right? You would think like, what's going on here? Right? If nobody was to translate it for you, if no one was to give you explanation as to what was being said, you wouldn't know what was happening, right? Because you hear the pastor or people in general just saying this unknown language. So it says tongues are a sign not for believers because believers already know what speaking in tongues is. Even if they don't really understand what's being said, they still know that the presence of God is at work if someone is speaking in tongues. But for an unbeliever, they wouldn't know that. And then that's why it goes on to say that it's better to prophesy than to speak in tongues, right? So if you're not breaking down what you're saying or translating what you're saying or what's being said in tongues, then, an unbeliever is going to think that it's a bunch of chaos going on.
O ikada sondro ora magada eta semotokota eka semotopa kin aramoko era baka.
Now, that's some of the cleanest sounding tongues I ever heard. This is from a dude who used to believe in tongues. He don't believe in tongues anymore. He's a pastor on the internet. Point is, for all of you who don't believe in Christianity, for all you Muslims and atheists and agnostics, did you find that shit convincing? Because the Bible says that tongues is a sign for the unbelievers. Did that shit make you believe in Jesus? That tongues is a sign for the unbelievers?
So let's read it. So it says, if therefore the whole church comes together and all speaks in tongues, and outsiders or unbelievers enter, will they not say that you are out of your mind? But if all prophesy, an unbeliever or outsider who enters is reproved by all and called to account by all. After the secrets of the unbelievers' hearts are disclosed, the person will bow down before God and worship him, declaring God is really among you.
Believers. Did that shit make you believe in Jesus? Did that shit seem like a miracle? Here, let's actually pull up.
It depends who you ask, though.
Another one of someone who actually believes in tongues.
Hallelujah!
Yes.
Hallelujah!
Did you find that shit convincing? Because I didn't. Does that make you want to believe in Jesus? Does that make you believe in the supernatural, or does this just sound like a woman yelling out gibberish? Because that's what it is. And it's not historical biblical tongues. The tongues mentioned in the Bible is, speaking in other human languages miraculously. The point I'm making is that it's baked into the text that there would be signs for unbelievers, but there are none. You cannot provide any. So these are logical reasons I'm putting forth. I could talk about my own experience. I could run through the list of contradictions and historical inaccuracies and scientific errors in the Bible, but that's pointless because Christians apologists are just going to make excuses after excuses. And I'm saying, like, take a look at the contradiction between the genealogy for Jesus in the Bible, right? That's a clear, blatant contradiction. But a Christian can say, well, isn't it possible that one of these is the genetic bloodline of Mary and one is Joseph and some shit like that? And I guess it's possible. It's not probable. It's not a convincing argument, but because there is enough possibility that is true, that is sufficient for the Christian to say your argument is refuted. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But these are logical, clear things that are irrefutable in the Bible. Challenge has been thrown down. I can guarantee you there isn't a single Christian on the planet that can pick this up and meet this challenge. If you're ready to go, let's go down to the nearest children's hospital. Come through to Texas. Let's go down to the nearest children's cancer hospital and and get to work. Let's start healing some babies. I promise you it will never
I'm pretty sure someone can
happen. Yeah, man. But hey, that's what's up. I'm just gonna be living life like a normal human. Yeah, man, I'm done with all of this foolishness. I'm done with the bigot.
It sucks that Don is saying this, man. It really hits home because I've kind of seen and watched his journey, you know, and a lot of the times I realize that a lot of people back out of the faith because it's considered too hard. It's considered too hard to try and live up to the life or standard that God is calling us to live up to. And yes, it can be hard. It can be difficult leaving your old self behind, but on the other side, it's very worth it, right? It's very worth it once you stay down and actually be obedient. But a lot of the times, I notice a lot of people, they just can't stand the fire. They can't stand what comes with this walk. And that's understandable, but it just shows who they are spiritually, right? So, you know, it sucks that Don is going back to his vomit. And yeah, all we can do is really pray for him,
Tree. I'm
man.
done with all of this bullshit, bro. As a species, we need to move on from this shit, bro, because it's holding us back. It's making us unnecessarily hateful to other people who don't see the world the way we see it, who don't practice the same cultures that we practice. And you know what I'm saying?
And it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be like that. If somebody don't believe in Jesus, I'm not gonna call them stupid or I'm not gonna talk down on them. They just don't believe in what I believe in, and that's fine. So it doesn't have to be like that.
It's just holding us back. It's holding us back as human beings, and it's held me back for 3 years, but not anymore. Not anymore.
Dang, that's tough. Let me know what you guys think of this video down below, man. Oh man, this is crazy. We're seeing another soldier go down. And yeah, this is crazy, man. Let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Let's go.